All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for watching, for listening, for following, for subscribing. I appreciate y'all very much. If you are watching this on the video side, we are actually live. We're streaming this live on the video side right now. You can probably hear some noise in the background. I am at Sonny Red's in Lackawanna, just minutes away from Highmark Stadium. And I am joined by one of the very best Buffalo Bills content creators in this game, period. And the story from Cover One. My man, Greg Tompsett, dude. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing great. I was waiting for the guest that you were introducing to show up because I'm also here. But no, dude, I'm so ready for the draft to get here. So excited. A handful of people to be already come out and say hello and have a good time
they like you
tonight.
here, man.
Getting to be here in person tonight. Normally, I'm coming live from remote places all over the country or just back at home. So it's nice to be here in Buffalo, being able to talk about the Bills and be ready for this draft.
I'll tell you what. So, yeah, we're going to talk plenty Bills, plenty draft. You know what? Actually, maybe I'll make you talk 50 minutes worth of Lindy Ruff, and we'll get your thoughts. And I know what a big hockey guy you are. I know you want to talk about what they're going to might do with their bottom six forwards this summer.
Clearly, I have several thoughts, especially on the bottom six forwards.
No, but seriously, we got plenty of Bills stuff, plenty of draft stuff to get to here in just a few minutes. Let me start by saying this right off the bat. Again, we are live here, Sonny Red's, Lackawanna. This place, let me give you a take. This is the God's honest truth. And I'm not pandering like Joe from Buffalo Winds always tells me I'm a panderer. I am, I guess, maybe. But this is not pandering. This is the God's honest truth. I've been saying this for a long time now. Sonny Red's might be the most underrated place in Western New York.
100%.
I mean, these wings, and you just had them for the first time.
Oh, my God.
And the pizza, the fish fries, just the bar, the vibe, the patio when it's nice out. This is one of the best places in all of Western New York to eat at, to hang out with, to catch that vibe. And I kind of don't want people like you finding out about this place, though, man. You got way bigger reach than I do, and I kind of like this place being underrated and under the radar. And nobody, what is it? Keep it a secret. Keep Sonny Red's a secret. And people like you are going to come here and start talking about it and ruining that shit for me, man.
I'm sorry because I'm going to. They were fantastic. These wings were awesome. So, living all around the country, I eat chicken wings a lot still. Mm-hmm. But everywhere else, I get my wings hot. When I'm back home, I get a medium because, it's hard to trust people around here. Things get real spicy.
Sure.
They bring out this awesome platter. The presentation was excellent. The hot had a jalapeno on top. And I was like, all right. So I'm going to start with the medium. Let me start with the medium. And I have a bite, crispy, fantastic, nice meaty wings, and awesome flavor. That's the biggest thing for me. Like, I can go buy a bottle of Frank's Red Hot and make up some wings. Mm-hmm. The flavor was awesome. Like, all right, it gives me confidence. It's not too hot. I think I can go for the hot. The hot were even better. Like, the flavor on the hot was even better. So I love chicken wings. No joke. I think they're like top 4, top 5 for me that I've had in the area. Like, these were fantastic wings. Absolutely love them. I couldn't be happier that you brought it here tonight. I'm going to be back here again for sure.
My favorite thing about their wings, and kind of to your point here, a lot of places, a lot of great places, they're basically are some form of Frank, some ratio Frank's, butter, whatever that ratio might be, and some do it better than others. That I promise you, that's not Frank's.
No,
not Frank's. It's a signature sauce, really good. And I think Eric's going to kill me for forgetting about it. The one exactly to call, but they're the Eric Wood something. That's what the wings are that we had.
It's a thicker sauce. Like there's something to it. There's a little something extra to it that keeps it stuck there. It's not like the greasy. So when it's just Frank's and butter, it's almost all on the plate. It's not as much on the wing. These were stuck on the wing. I was happy.
Sonny Red's to me is like a edge rusher right now in the 2024 NFL draft. There are maybe 4 first rounders, first round grades, and this is one of them, man. Let's talk about it. The big 4. You got 9/11 Tavern. Yep. You got Barbell, the OG Barbell.
Yes. East Aurora.
Barbell
North is a great facility, but obviously it's hard to transplant everything that's from the original. But Barbell Original is right there.
It is. Yeah. I've had Barbell North twice.
Yeah.
It's good. It's not as good as the original. But anyway, Barbell, 911, Elmos, Sonny Reds. Those are your first round grades. That's your lot 2, your Jared Verse, your Turner, maybe your Chop Robinson. Yeah. And then there's going to start to be a drop off after that. A lot of good places, but there's going to be a little bit of a drop off.
That's perfectly well said. The original Barbell is still my number 1, 911, Elmos right there. Honest to God, I think Sonny Reds is my 4th. Like it's right there. And so it'll come up later tonight. It's my Chop Robinson. Like, I think Chop Robinson deserves to be up there with the top 3. It's not a 3 and then a 4. Like, he deserves to be up there. It's right there for me. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'm really happy. We were talking for a little bit. We were eating dinner before the show. I always love getting a chance to have a guest on and just having that vibe of sitting down next to somebody and talking to somebody, face to face. It's cool to do StreamYard like the way, most of us do our interviews most of the time. But when you get an opportunity to be out in person, it's really cool. And I just, like I said, I really love this vibe here at Sonny Reds. I do, I was kind of joking a little bit. But on a serious note, like one of your hashtags over the last couple of years on Twitter, Greg doesn't know hockey, but you were following it some. I know you know who Lindy Ruff is. I'd be remiss if I had a show just 24 hours or so after Lindy Ruff gets hired and has a press conference earlier today on Thursday. If I didn't at least ask you, again, without being much of a hockey guy, but you know who Lindy Ruff is, you know what he meant to this organization. I was here for so long, and now him being back. How do you feel about that?
So the intricacies of, is he the right coach at this part of the development curve of the roster? Like, I'm not going to know that kind of intricacy, but my immediate reaction was, oh, this is exactly what they need. They need an established guy who knows how to build a playoff. I know, he doesn't have a ring. Like, I get the whole idea. But having a successful guy who knows what it takes to get into the playoffs, to win rounds in the playoffs, to go to the Stanley Cup Finals, like, I have a feeling that anyone who was a net positive or neutral or better coach, when you have this kind of roster that's been building this much talent, they've been this close the last 2 years to making the playoffs, I think a lot of people would be set up pretty well to look good. And then I think he's a little bit extra there to have. He knows what it means to the community. You see his presser before when he's, with the Devils, I think he's like, hey, I got to hurry up. I got to go watch the Bills game. Having a guy who knows what it means to get back to the playoffs here in Buffalo, knows what it meant at the peak of success that we've had as a franchise here in Buffalo. So, I may not be able to tell you who the exact guys are that he's going to take advantage of in each of those spots. But I think that extra little push that, why we didn't see the production all season from Tage Thompson, why we had the ebbs and flows of why do different coaches get different production out of Skinner, what happened, different guys that he's going to be able to pull up. Hey, what happened with Cousins after the contract? I think this kind of guy brings that level of professionalism that, hey, this is what's expected here. If you guys want to take advantage of all this potential talent people talked about, this is what it's going to take. I want a guy that has that gravitas in the room. I think he's that kind of guy. And then I'll hope the people who know hockey better than me know the strategic part of how he fits.
Well, I'll say this. That locker room is locker room clean-out day earlier this week. They had 2 days of locker room clean-out day. And to a man, it almost felt like they were throwing, to some extent, they were talking about accountability or lack of accountability. We need more accountability. We need this. We need that. In a way, they were kind of throwing Don Granato, it felt like to me and to many other people in the hockey community, like almost under the bus. Lindy Ruff's the right guy for this job right now. I don't know if he's going to be a guy. He only got a 2-year contract, reportedly. Lance Sosowski of the Buffalo News reported that. I don't know if he's going to be the long-term guy, but he's the guy to steer this ship right now and kind of crack some heads. You know, I'm sure there's coaches in the football world and other sports that kind of take on that role. My 2 quick here takeaways from the press conference earlier on Thursday. Kevin Adams said that he interviewed like double-digit candidates. Dude's lying.
That's a lot. That's an awful lot in a very short period of time.
Absolutely.
He did some very efficient interviews.
Yeah, that's my number one takeaway. Dude's lying, unless he wants to count interviewing his maybe his wife and his couple kids or something like that. If you want to count that as an official interview, well, then maybe. He did not interview 10 people. He knew when he was when he did the press conference right after Granado's firing, he knew what he wanted, and which is fine. That's not I don't think that should be critical, be criticized. And then the other thing is with these players, and then we'll get into some football talk here. Playtime's over for those boys in the locker room, man. Like I said, talking about the coach and accountability and the leadership and this and that. Lindy Ruff ain't going to play that shit with these guys at all, man. So accountability is just not going to be a word.
And I know there was like a wish list of different ones. And again, it just I'll expose myself of how little I know. Like I know maybe Brindamore wasn't extended yet, and like maybe that was your white knight of like, oh, that's the number one. But I think the people who are frustrated at like wanting some exhaustive, comprehensive search are pretending that out of all the established candidates that Lindy Ruff was like some fifth or sixth choice. Like, okay, maybe he was second or third, but there weren't that many established guys with that many playoff appearances looking to switch over.
Right.
They're like, yeah, okay, maybe he wasn't the number one choice, but it sounds like he's going to extend there, in Carolina. And like, that's not an available option.
That wasn't
anyways.
realistic.
That wasn't real. But people hear that in this, we'll get into the draft, where people now, well, I did see that one mock where they got this guy and he fell all the way to 28. I want that to happen. Well, just because you heard it once on the internet doesn't mean that was a real thing. So now being in a position where, they got one of the best available options of the guys that fit their criteria. They weren't looking to elevate an Appert or someone who, maybe eventually will be a good NHL coach. They wanted someone, because of what we said, they did the thing before where they fired a guy, had an interim, and let a short-term window of success win them over that, oh, we got to just keep him now. So when people got mad, oh, why didn't you fire him and give Appert a chance? Because, well, they knew they got duped before. Right. And they didn't want to get caught up in the buzz of some late season run because this guy, motivated the guys. They wanted somebody to come in who had, the skins on the wall to say, no, listen, I know what it takes. I'm going to tell you what it takes. And any of you who aren't going to do what it takes, I'll find other people to play.
You might not be that much of a hockey guy, but you're definitely a football guy. And to relate to how the Buffalo Bills used to be. Remember, there was a time with the Buffalo Bills, you would say, well, this guy, is not going to be interested. Bill Cowher. The Bills wanted to get Bill Cowher. Like, why would you want to come to Buffalo at that time from a football perspective? That's kind of what it's like on the hockey side. Like, you can want Brindamore all you want. You're not going to get him.
We were always taking our fourth, fifth. People give McDermott a ton of trouble for who was the first offensive coordinator hire. You go back, you look at, well, how the hell did we end up here? But because he wanted these other six guys. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you're falling back into your like seventh backup plan. Yeah. And that I guess that's how Rick gets over here. And we're going to try to stumble our way through, and then moved on quickly, brought somebody else in, hit with Dayball, who also wasn't anybody's first choice. Because if you looked at his track record beforehand, he had been a failed offense coordinator in Cleveland and Miami. And now all of a sudden you hit, and the same way they, to whatever anybody thinks about McDermott, he wasn't anybody's first choice either, and they hit on him from a relative success standpoint. They hit on that with Dayball. Sometimes you get lucky, but more often than not, you get your Doug Marones, or you get a cash grab from a Rex Ryan, or you get some other retread.
Well, you remember how it used to be with the Bills, even besides just like the coaches. It's like players that want to come in, the Sabres are got to go through that right now. They got to get that respect. They got to earn that respect. So no player, no coach Buffalo's not going to be their first choice. We lived it with the Bills, and now things have kind of turned around, kind of transitioning into some Bills NFL draft stuff. I don't even know if you've heard this today, because, by the way, Greg, for the few people who might not know this, Greg does not actually live in Buffalo. Not a towner. You are in town today. Yeah. Double wing stop for you, too, man.
So I grew up in Western New York. I'm the only person in my family who doesn't live in Western New York. Most of my family's Southern tier. I grew up in like the Jamestown, Chautauqua Lake area. All my family's still in Western New York. I left for college. Haven't been back since. I've moved all over the country for work. But every time I come home, I have to be able to get wings in. It's not normally Barbill for lunch and then Sonny Red's for dinner, but I'm not going to complain. It was a pretty good day. I met, the lovely Aaron Quinn.
I was going to say, you hooked up with your boy.
Had to meet up with Aaron while he was here. Otherwise, if he wasn't on solo duty tonight at home, he would have been here with us tonight, stopping by to say hi. But I did get to see him for lunch, and now out here for dinner. Got a conference all day tomorrow during the day. So trying to take advantage of some time while I'm here in town.
Yeah, I remember, dude, when I was in Florida and lived in Florida, every single time I got back here, I was just wings. Anyway, all right, so my point was this. I don't know if you've even heard a report from Albert Breer earlier in the day was talking about Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. might have some shoulder issues. How serious, how significant they are, that's unknown. How much that might affect their draft stock, obviously, that's unknown as well. But when you hear a little bit something like that, and in all likeliness, the Bills are going to invest an early pick in a wide receiver, at least one. Well, how much do you get concerned when you hear something like that? Just 72 hours before the draft?
So, one, it always makes me curious, where did that come from? Why not? I can guarantee you NFL teams didn't find that out today. We found that out today.
Right.
NFL teams knew that going in. So that makes me think, I'm not even exaggerating. Did Brandon Beane put that information out there? Like, a team who is interested in those players falling are the ones who put that information out there. The part that's concerning for me, I'm a fan like everybody else. When a guy like Albert Breer puts it out there, I have to pivot to, like in our world, a Kyle Trimble. So Kyle Trimble goes through and he says, oh, that actually checks out with some of the things that I heard or saw. And that it wasn't, there may be a shoulder injury. It was presented as both of them may need shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
And that, for a wide receiver to have surgery in May, he's not even going to miss training camp. Like that's not the end of the, assuming it's not some crazy thing. Like both of them, I saw their workouts. I saw them do the, things like vertical jump with like extension of the arm, gauntlet drill. Like it's obviously not some, tremendously impactful thing, but a lot of times you do find those things like, hey, we'd rather get this fixed now, not need to worry about it. Let's secure it, lock it up. Let's make sure that labrum isn't an issue during the season. Okay, yeah, you might have to play with a harness for a little bit here, but this is more preventative than anything else. It's an information nugget. It's not a disqualifier for me. But if we see all of a sudden Malik Neighbors, who I think to everybody is probably a top 5 talent in the draft, and a lock is a top 7 to 8 pick at the worst, probably a top 5 pick. If all of a sudden we see him on the board at 10, 11, 12, that'll tell you why. If Brian Thomas Jr., who I think most people see as a 10 to 20 range and probably like 12 to 17 range, if all of a sudden he's on the board for the Bills at pick 28, it will become a self-fulfilling pick. And this is the exact same language I would use for Liatu Latu. It's the same language I would use for the off-field concerns for Adonai Mitchell. If those guys are on the board and the Bills make the pick, it doesn't mean that the Bills all of a sudden got comfortable being risky. It means that their checked out, that their background check, their medical checked out, and they're not as concerned as other teams. If they pass, it's all of a sudden going to be, that's an obvious talent that they would have taken. They wouldn't pass on Brian Thomas Jr. if he's on the board at pick 28. It must have been much worse. Maybe they think he needs surgery and it's more reconstructive than we thought, and he might miss part over the season. So that will be the piece that will be self-fulfilling. As of now, the combination of the late leak, which makes me very much think that this is smoke to get him to drop, and literally watching them with my eyes do the vertical and the gauntlet, I believe this is just that exactly what it is. It's smoke. It's probably accurate. It might be real, but we'll hear about, he had a quick cleanup procedure, and then he's also at training camp and doesn't miss a day.
Isn't it kind of wild? Like, it's seemingly every single year, there's always something that breaks or something that comes out like right before the draft, whether it's an injury history, whether it's character issues, you know what I mean? I remember Josh Allen having tweets when he was like 7 years old.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
joking about the 7, but you get what I'm saying. Every year.
On the good side of it, you say not good, but on the like unfortunate for the player, Warren Sapp, Randy Moss. Those guys who were top 5 talents that went in the 20s because of off-field concerns. You also see some on the other side of it. Do you remember Michigan defensive tackle Maurice Hurst? He was supposed to be a top 5 pick. All of a sudden, medical red flags, heart issues, off-field concerns for Ramon Foster, the linebacker out of Alabama, was supposed to maybe was targeted by the Bills and was supposed to be a top 10 pick. Falls into the second round. Maurice Hurst went to the 5th round. Those guys, it turned out, well, they probably shouldn't have been taken that high anyways. They weren't that good as it was.
Right.
So it goes both ways. There's way more Maurice Hurst and Ramon Fosters that fall for reasons we don't know about, that don't get publicized, than there are Laramie Tunsil gas mask. That Laramie Tunsil's maybe the best left tackle in the NFL. He should have been a top 3 pick. But you get a gas mask picture that comes out on draft day that's going to throw some teams off. There's way more that they fell because, well, we're not 100% they're that good anyways, and now there's another red flag versus the Warren Sapps, Randy Mosses, and Laramie Tunsils.
I have, and I want to get into these with you here in just a minute. I had 3 kind of draft scenarios. I guess you can call them bold to kind of bold. I want to get your thoughts on them.
Medium takes, maybe not hot takes. But
well, one of them is definitely hot, and I know on the mock draft that you did one of the things that I did, so I definitely want to get your thoughts on that.
Okay.
Before that, though, because look, we're obviously headed towards talking about wide receiver, but before we do that, much to the chagrin of somebody like Jeremy White, you might want to cover your ears for this part, but let's just say that the Bills, for whatever reason, are not on the wide receiver train. Brandon Beane's not on the wide receiver train, at least not with that first pick anyway. Give me a case looking at this roster right now. And again, I'm being a little bit unfair because you don't have the hindsight of knowing what the first 27 picks are going to be. So I'm being unfair to you. I'm prefacing that right off the top. But let's just say, for whatever reason, the receivers don't fall the way you want them to. Give me a case, looking at this roster right now, why you could be good with them taking, say, either an interior offensive lineman or an edge, which is a guy that you kind of hinted at the very beginning of the show as well, too.
So the combination, the circumstance would have to exist isn't that hard because, yes, I think anyone who tries to tell you the wide receiver isn't our biggest need is being disingenuous.
Sure.
But it's not so far and away our number. It's not our only need. Like, we need an edge rusher. We need a defensive tackle. We need a safety. We need an interior offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. Now, if we take a linebacker in the first round, I'd have some questions. If we take, cornerback is a premium position. Offensive tackle is a premium position. If we take an offensive tackle or a corner in the first round, I'd have some questions.
Sure.
But let's say, is it that hard to think of a scenario where 7 or 8 wide receivers go in the top 27 picks?
No.
It's not the most likely, but that's not crazy. Like, there's some really good guys that people like. So if that happens, and it would take the combination of not only does that happen, but 2 of Beane's guys, the guys he would have traded up a little bit for, not only go, but they go at like Brian Thomas Jr. at 11, and let's say, just for example purposes, Xavier Worthy is his next guy. That's his wide receiver 5. So his top 5 or the top 3, Brian Thomas Jr., and we'll just use Xavier Worthy.
Sure.
Well, Brian Thomas Jr., he would have traded up for Thomas Jr. if he got to 16, 17, 18. Well, he goes 12. And now Xavier Worthy is a guy that he would have traded up to 22, 23, 24. He goes 17. And 2 or 3 more guys go. And all of a sudden, Beane's sitting there going, well, do I take my wide receiver 8, my wide receiver 9, or do I take Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle from Texas, who all of a sudden now we're set at defensive tackle, and we are set in the post Daquan Jones, Austin Johnson world. We have Ed Oliver and Byron Murphy for the next 5 years. We're good. Or if those guys are there, maybe it's tougher with a Chop Robinson, who I think deserves to be in that 25 to 35 range. But what if it's Jared Verse? What if it's off-field questions with Dallas Turner? What if it's medicals with Leatu Latu and guys that are, hey, on paper, those are top 15 talents? Is edge rusher not a premium enough position for our fans? Are we so enamored that it has to be a wide receiver that we would rather take wide receiver 9 than edge rusher 2? the second best pass rusher, we'd rather take the 9th best wide receiver.
Right.
If that world exists, I would like to think that fans can get their head around why. And again, some of the circumstances could fit for Zach Frazier, Jackson Powers Johnson, Graham Barton, whoever they have as their number one interior offensive lineman. That's a less premium position. I'm more okay with edge over wide receiver than interior. I would need it to be wide receiver 9 to be interior offensive line over a wide receiver. But again, if 7 or 8 of them go, we have to be open to it. And then we can still go back in the second and get a Roman Wilson or a Ricky Pearsall or a Jalen Polk or a Javon Baker, a really, really good receiver that, yes, it's not the same as one of those top guys, but maybe we get a top 15 talent at another position we wouldn't have gotten because the run at wide receiver was so crazy. And then we'll deal with the rest, and we'll talk about it here in a bit. Maybe you make a trade for a veteran on Saturday morning, the day free.
Yeah. So when we were having our wings here at Sonny Reds, and we were having a conversation about mock drafts, you brought up a really good point that resonated with me. And I'd like you to just take a minute and share with people, because there's a lot of people enjoy mock drafts, whether it's just trying to get them right, whether it's just they just simply like, seeing what other people think. But there are a lot of critics of mock drafts too who say they're stupid, they're a waste, they never come to fruition. You can blow up one bad pick and a mock gets blown up. That is true, and it's accurate 99% of the time. But explain to people what you told me, why there's still great value for fans following mock drafts, besides just the predictive part of who you pick where.
Yeah. So the reason that mock drafts have gotten kind of ruined for people is because of all the folks who try to use them as receipts to go back. Oh, look, I called that pick.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you did 147 mock drafts. I'd hope that one of them was right. Yes, congratulations that 1% of your mock drafts were right. So, and don't get me wrong. So last year at Cover one person had the call right. Uber Hansen literally predicted the Bills would trade up for Dalton Kincaid.
Wow, did he really?
He was the only human that I found who called that, let alone somebody at Cover One. None of us were even close on any of that.
No.
But just like last year, doing a ton of mock drafts isn't for the predictive nature. It's exactly what we just talked about. And hey, where are the drop-offs in positional value? Where are the spots where, hey, I don't always love it when I take a defensive end in the first, but when I go wide receiver and then interior offensive lineman or wide receiver and defensive tackle, once I get out of the second round, I can't find a single edge rusher that I even want on the team. So now it's like, okay, well, I need to try to make one of those first 2 picks an edge rusher because the drop-off's crazy. Or like, yeah, I do like Tyler Nubin, or I do like Bullard or Bullock or Bishop or whoever you like at safety. But you want to know what? No matter what, I keep finding guys, even after I take one, in the 4th and 5th round, they're like, I'd still like Sione Vaki. I'd still like Malik Mustafa. I'd still like Bo Braid. And like, there's guys who are like, I don't need to take one of these safeties earlier because there's no Kyle Hamilton in this draft. There's no Ed Reed in this draft. Like, there's no, monster lot. There's no Troy Polamalu in this draft. But there's a ton of pretty good guys. And the idea, everyone I talk to, like really educated people, you go from national guys, Daniel Jeremiah, Ben Solak, whoever you want to look at, local guys, Joe Marino, Chris Trapasso, people who do the work on the draft, all of them have their order of safeties different. So you tell me the guy that we need to take in the second round. No, you don't. We have no idea. And I know I can wait on that. So the value of mock drafts for me is figuring that stuff out, is that you want to know what? I actually do find some interior offensive linemen that I kind of like in the 4th round. And then, do I think that Zach Frazier or Jackson Powers Johnson are probably better than Zach Zinter out of Michigan? Probably, but maybe not. Like, they're interior offensive linemen. Like, how precisely do we know that? And that if I get the guy that Aaron Cromer tells me, no, I want that guy, like he pegged on Osiris Torrance and like he's turned Spencer Brown into the level that he's produced at. If there's a guy he likes, I'm good with that. So that's what I find the value of mock drafts, is not the predictive receipts that people try to use them as. It's the exercise of learning where the pockets of value are in the draft. And then I use that to keep myself calm when, like, man, I know we need a safety. I know we need a safety. I won't be nervous if we don't have one going into day 3 because we have 2 fourths and 3 fifths. And out of those picks, all in the top 150, I know we're going to get a safety there that I'm going to be happy with.
Safety and guard, I feel like, are the 2 positions where, because of doing the mock drafts and because of watching you guys do them, because of having like Anthony Maraska and Bruce Nolan on my show to do mocks, I've learned what you said to your point. I don't got to go get Frazier or Martin in round 1. Even if the wide receiver train doesn't fall the way that you want to, you could pivot, you could do a bunch of other things, because I've learned that there's some pretty good guards late day 2, early day 3. So I had Anthony Marino on my show yesterday or 2 days ago. I don't remember anymore. I do these stupid things every day anymore.
You do so many shows.
And we had a little bit of fun. We did some like bowl predictions, all right? And my biggest bowl prediction was a 2-parter. Anthony's, by the way, for the record, was that the Bills are going to – he didn't get too specific. He just said that the Bills are going to take a really big swing at receiver in the draft. Like, they're going to move way up for somebody, and kind of left it open-ended there. I was being specific because I like to have some fun. I said that I think the Bills are going to move up in round 1 Thursday night. And this is like 1 of 3. This is like I said, I want to get spicy bold with this one. They're going to move up, but it's not going to be for a receiver. You've talked about these edge guys, and I just think there's a big drop-off, just like we were talking about jokingly about the wings. You know, after a certain level, the wing spots fall off. Same thing with the edges. Jared Verse is a guy to me. If he can be around in like the late teens, it might cost you your first, might cost you one of those 2-2s that you have next year. Maybe you only get a 4-back or a 5th-back or something like that. But I look at the edge position, and Von Miller being 35 years old, who knows what he's got left. He's healthy now, but who knows how long that lasts. I like Greg Rizzo. He's solid. He's solid. He's rock solid. He's rock solid. But, 5 sacks last year or 8 the year before. You guys going to get your 13, 14 sacks? I'm looking for minimum, even as a rookie, maybe what Leonard Floyd did last year, 10.5 sack type player. I don't know what Von Miller's that. Jared Verse is a great player, good traits, 3 years of productivity in college, and 3 years of at least 9 sacks. So that was part 1 of my prediction. You go get your edge guy. And I know there'll be a lot of people in real time Thursday that would probably lose their shit if the Bills not only they take a receiver, but they moved up for an edge.
You see the yellow sign come up in the trade, and everybody's waiting, and then you see the Bills logo pop up. They're like, oh my God, they're going to get a receiver, and then they take an edge rusher. Oh my God, people would lose their minds.
Did you see it's been floating around this week because they're so close to the draft. It's not new, it's old, but when Josh Allen got drafted, there was a group of fans who wanted Josh Rosen, and they were so demoralized because they took Josh Allen. So you never know. But anyway, my point was, good God, some of the reaction videos in today's world where everything's on, cell phone video, it would be nuts. But anyway, that was part 1 of mine. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Hockey.
Yeah, there's a goal in the hockey.
Yeah, we are live here at Sonny Red, by the way. So anyway, that's part 1. And then part 2, and I'm pretty sure you did this on your show this week. I am trading my first next year and going to get Brandon Ayuk. There's your receiver. There's your edge. What do you think?
So I do not advocate trading our first. I mean, obviously, I know there were some rumors about Justin Jefferson. If you have a chance to get Justin Jefferson, you move heaven and earth to make that happen. Pre-draft, whenever, anytime, every single day of the week, you make that happen. I think Brandon Ayuk is an awesome talent, really, really good. He's not a heaven and earth guy for me. He's a really, really good guy. He's not terribly different than the pre-Buffalo Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs was not a top 5 receiver coming into Buffalo.
Right.
He was a really, really good receiver. I don't believe he had made a Pro Bowl yet. I think he had been on the cusp of that, had been really, really good. Brandon Ayuk is really, really good. There are some analytics people who think he's the top 5 receiver, but I don't think that's consensus. Like, people probably have him closer to the 10 to 20 range, the 15th best receiver. If you have a chance to go get a guy like that, I'm interested in that. That to me is a in the moment deal, or ideally.
Hey, I need you to make it work. I should have included this.
Yes.
You are a cap guy. You are the resident cap guy with Bills Mafia. Everybody knows that shit. Greg's the cap guy. You also got to make this work financially.
Yes, and it's
how the hell do you do that?
So at first, I genuinely thought it wasn't possible.
Mhm.
That like, hey guys, the T. Higgins, the Brandon Ayuk, the Justin Jefferson, like you can't do it.
Right.
I literally went through every single contract, and I'm not exaggerating. You would probably have to restructure like 13 or 14 players. Now, many of those are it's 100,000 here, 200,000 there, 150,000 here. So they're not like crippling long-term moves.
Mhm.
I did not touch Von Miller. I did not Justin Jefferson. I'd have to touch Dawson Knox, but for Ayuk, I didn't have to touch Dawson Knox. But it's a list. So you would the two biggest ones are Ed Oliver. We have not touched Ed Oliver's contract. It's a second year of the extension.
Mhm.
You can get $4 million by restructuring him. There's a nice chunk. You're at $2.8 million already. You get $4 million more. Boom, we're at 6.8. We haven't touched Matt Milano's extension since he was restructured. That's another $3 million. Boom, you're up at 9.8. So all of a sudden, you're a lot closer right there. Now you're cobbling some things together with some less than preferred options. So I don't even know if we didn't technically do the bare minimum of what Daquan Jones, Taron Johnson, some of the newer extensions.
Mhm.
They could have done a little bit more of what there was. There is a misconception that we have extra money floating out there for Josh Allen. We actually don't. What they did was we didn't use the maximum for this year because when they redid Josh, they redid this year and next year. Both years' cap hits were already fixed.
Mhm.
So the reason we didn't maximize this year is because they did this year and next year. So there's no bonus money left for Josh Allen. We already did Connor McGovern. We technically didn't maximize every penny on Deion Dawkins. And then you're talking about, like, do you want to mess with Tyler Bass? Like, we can't get out of Tyler Bass's contract this year, but if you restructure it, you can't get out of his contract this year and next year. Right now, we could get out of it next year. So now you're getting into those kind of ranges of like, well, that is another $2 million, and that's enough. Like, if we do those handful of things, and a lot of those are, again, 250 here, 150 there. Tyler Bass is almost $2 million. Now you're getting to where I can technically fit Brandon Ayuk's 13.7, I think it is, million in. And for anybody, a lot of people will be yelling right now, ghosts listening on the internet are yelling big, well, just do a restructure or an extension. The Niners can't agree to that and then trade that restructured one. They bury their salary
They bury
cap.
themselves.
They destroy their own. So any acquiring team has to take on the contract as is and then reach an extension.
Wow.
So you have to make enough room for it. So T. Higgins is I'm going to say impossible. Justin Jefferson is darn close to actually impossible. If I did, no joke, like 25 contracts, I can technically make the room. And he's the kind of player that, you want to know what? We might restructure 25 contracts. So if you have a chance to get Justin Jefferson, you make it work. The number of restructures will not be the reason that you don't make it work.
Right.
But Brandon Ayuk, it is 5 or 6 guys. It's not perfect. It's not ideal, but we technically can do it. And then you reach an agreement, and paying a guy of his talent in his age, 26, 27, 28, 29 seasons, he hasn't even turned 26 yet. He's 25 right now. I'm fine with that. Pay him 4 years, $100 million. He's a $25 million receiver. That's how much they cost nowadays. You're paying him in his physical peak. He's been healthy. And then you can make the first 2 years of the cap hits low. And then his cap hit goes up when Von Miller's off the team, when we're probably ready for a post-Dawson Knox world, when all the dead cap from the Black Wednesday moves are all off the cap.
Right.
We're fine. We make it work there. So technically possible, not comfortable, not great, but we can definitely do it if we need to.
If you're the general manager, how strong of a consideration? If Frisco calls you, and by the way, if he really is getting traded, it's not like the Buffalo Bills are going to be the only team that have interest in him. I mean, there's going to be a lot of interest. Yeah. But let's just say, for the sake of our discussion here, and you're the general manager, and you're calling the shots for the Bills, and Frisco were to call you, you know how to make it work if you have to, and they're saying, look, I ain't playing no games with you. I want a 2025-1, and what are the chances? I'm not going to put you on the spot right now and ask you to make a split-second decision, but because you'd be thinking about this if you're the general manager, you know, a bunch of other things too. But like, what would your thought process be right now?
So I would be hesitant, and I probably wouldn't trade this year's first. I don't think I would. I think that there's too much that we have going. We need that new contract.
I agree.
And I wouldn't trade. I don't even know. I say that I'll get to it in a minute, but I would probably do the 2025 first. I don't think I would do the 2025 first pre-draft, because what if Brian Thomas Jr. does fall to you at 28 and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, we're going to take a shot there. We're good. Now, if we get through day one and it falls like our earlier conversation where, hey, we had to take an edge rusher, we had to take Jackson Powers Johnson, we had to take Byron Murphy because look at all the guys that were gone, then that's where the draft ends, and all day during the day Friday we're on the phone talking to, again, I don't think you can make it work with Cincinnati. I don't think Minnesota's going to trade Jefferson. You're checking in with San Francisco. You're even doing lower level ones. You're calling Denver about Cortland Sutton. You're calling Seattle about Tyler Lockett. You're checking around, being like, hey, what are you guys doing? What are your thoughts here? You're calling Tennessee about DeAndre Hopkins. You're going through those different steps and checking it out. And if the youngest, healthiest, best option, and everybody's asking for the moon, and no one's a super discount, you're like, hey, if I can get Tyler Lockett for a 5th-round pick, I'll take the best receiver at 60, bring in Tyler Lockett, and we'll try it again next year. I'll make it work. But say everybody's asking for the moon, and okay, if we're going to give up a premium pick, I want the youngest, healthiest guy. Let's go with Brandon Ayuk. Well, if next year I have 2 2s because of the Stefon Diggs trade, and one of the second-rounders is Minnesota, who's either going to have Sam Darnold or the 3rd or 4th best rookie.
Yeah.
I'll take a shot at that.
Sure.
I'll take a shot that they were 7-10 with Kirk Cousins. They were under 500 with a healthy Kirk Cousins. I don't think all of a sudden the 3rd or 4th best rookie is going to be better than Kirk Cousins off of day one, maybe long term. So maybe that's the 40th overall pick. Well, if I have the 40th and the 64th pick, I'm feeling okay about not having the first rounder. I'm more okay with that. So, it's not ideal. The best case scenario is we get a guy that falls in our lap and everything's great. But, if not, I am more open to that after the first round goes through.
We are live here at Sonny Red's. And by the way, as we're recording this, it might look like I'm looking in the camera, Greg. I'm not. I'm looking at our food. I'm making sure nobody's messing with it.
I need a little more cup, the charred cup.
The minute we're done recording, I'm going to be right back after that. By the way, I'm going to throw it up on the graphic too, because I forgot to do it at the beginning, man. Dude, they even look good, these wings. Come on,
that's what I mean. Like, it's a thicker sauce. Like, it's not like just a greasy sauce that falls all over the plate or runs off the wings. It's a really good, thick sauce. I love it.
Yeah,
love it.
And the pizza's good too, man. I'm a wing guy. By the way, it's the first time I had pizza in like freaking 2 months or something like that. Anyway, all right. So before the break, we were kind of talking about like my wild scenario, and for the record, I don't believe that's going to happen. Yeah. Although I won't be shocked.
It's more than a non-zero chance. Like I do think there's been legitimate research into the veteran free agent market, and the like trade acquisition market. And I know you've made the point previously. Brandon Beane doesn't love the situation that he was in with Stefon Diggs.
I think it's personal to an extent.
Yeah, I think he wants to show like, you think you had us over a barrel here? Well, here, look, this is what we have now. I don't think that's crazy. I think he's smart enough not to let his pride overtake everything and go overboard. But he's aggressive when he's not motivated. He's traded up in 4 out of his 6 picks when he's not pissed off about what just happened. It's more likely than not that he does make some kind of move for a veteran or up the draft board, because history tells us that's what he does.
These guys are human beings and they hear stuff. Last year, Sean McDermott, the Tyler Dunn article, that meant something to him. Yeah. What people are saying around the league, that the Bills are not going to be good and the receivers are going to stink without him. Brandon Beane's taking that to heart. He's gonna do something about it. But anyway, I want to kind of get to like what my other scenario will be, or at least my second one. And to me, this one feels a little more realistic. So you get to pick 28, maybe an edge is there. Chop Robinson is the guy that you've talked about.
Yeah, the top 3 are gone, but it's Chop.
Sure. And maybe Brandon Beane is not thinking like you and I are. Maybe he's like, you know what, this guard is going to be worth, who might be my center a year or 2 down the road. He might be worth that first rounder. I see a scenario where the Bills go not wide receiver in first round, but here's the caveat for this, kind of like sort of bold prediction. The Bills do have 2 2s next year, and they have number 60 this year. If you package and you went by the draft value chart, the more recent one too, you took 60 in their own second-round pick next year. that could get you all the way up to like 37, 38 in the draft.
Love
So you still would have your Diggs too from last year, or for next year, I should say, along with your first, because you didn't trade your first.
Yep.
You picked a non-receiver at 28. Now you're on the clock at, say, I wrote in my thing that the Titans would be a sweet spot. I picked
Great
like
spot.
38.
Yep.
You go get the best receiver there. How do you feel? I guess what I'm asking you here about that scenario is, how would you feel about what's going to be likely that next wave of receivers? Because now you're talking Thomas is probably gone. In fact, he will be gone. Mitchell's probably gone. Maybe even Worthy will be gone at that point. Now you're probably talking about the Coleman and the Franklin and a couple other guys that might be on your mind. What do you think about something like that?
So I got to be honest. That's actually my favorite pocket of the draft.
Yeah.
Because I'm a huge believer. If we have a chance to go get one of the top 3 guys, I would probably give up more than people think is smart. I probably would give up too much. I would overpay, and then I would just go watch Rome Odunze highlights for the next 3 days and not care how much we give up. We go get Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't care if I gave up 3 first-round picks. I got Marvin Harrison Jr. I'll get over
Gotcha.
it. But once you get beyond there, I actually have been – people think I don't like Brian Thomas Jr., and it's just that I think there's a really big gap between the top 3 and anyone else, even if it is Brian Thomas Jr., because I think there's a huge second tier that you can make a good case as 10 or 12 receivers deep, and that you have a ton of people in those spots. And now all of a sudden, I know really smart people that genuinely have Ladd McConkey as wide receiver 4. They have Roman Wilson in their top 6. They have Ricky Pearsall as wide receiver 5. So many fans listening to you here also listen to Joe Marino on Locked On Bills. Joe Marino has Xavier Legette straight up ahead of Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
If both guys were on the board at pick 28, he would take Xavier Legette. Joe knows the draft. That's what he did before he talked Bills. He knows the draft. So my favorite pocket of the draft is that second wave that's between 25 and 45. Now, in an ideal world, we get exactly what you said, where, hey, people got crazy about quarterbacks, got crazy about offensive tackles, got crazy about cornerbacks, and all of a sudden, a guy we can't pass up. And let's say it is a Jared Verse. Let's say Jared Verse falls to pick 28. Not only did we not have to trade up for him, but we get a top 10, top 15 talent at 28.
And that happens every year.
Yes.
Somebody like him, not saying he will, but something like that.
Look at Osiris Torrance last year.
Yeah.
How many people had him mocked us in the first?
I remember.
And then all of a sudden we get him without moving up in the second round.
Yeah.
So just flip that around the other way. We get a guy we do not expect. It's a sprint to the podium pick, and it's not receiver, and it'll piss people off. But he's just light years better than anybody else outside those top 3 receivers. He's a better prospect than Brian Thomas Jr. So we take that pick. But when you do that, and you talk about the value of doing mock drafts. I've done enough of these that it doesn't mean all of them are going to make it to 60. There still is a cutoff, and there's a lot of teams. How Carolina has picks 33 and 39. They might take 2 receivers at the 2 picks. So you do need to have a little bit of aggression. I love that 38th pick. One, you're getting ahead of the one pick there at 39. There's a run of teams at 40, 41, 42, 43. There's a lot of receiver-needy teams in that range. I'd love to find a way to get the best value possible at 28. If it's a receiver, that's great. But if it's not, move up from 60, be able to lock in one of those receivers that in many years probably would have been a first-round pick, because their draft didn't have 3 alpha number 1 receivers up above them. They probably would have been a Marquise Brown type first-round pick. In this draft, there's no chance Marquise Brown goes in the first round. It's just that kind of where those guys get pushed up because of the depth or lack of depth of the class. You have those moves that happen in that range. Now, all of a sudden, you get a guy who is a late first value at pick 38 because of that crazy second tier, and you're able to put that together. And maybe you pair that with, if you go that range, and it is Xavier Legette and it is an X receiver, that's great. But let's say it's not. Let's say some of those guys like Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Legette, Xavier Worthy, even Troy Franklin go a little bit earlier. And now all of a sudden it's, hey, we actually think Ladd McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, Roman Wilson, I'll use those 3, are better receivers than a bunch of those guys, but they're not the outside X guy that we thought we wanted. they're interchangeable with Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel. We can move any of them. They can all play outside. They can all play slot. It's a versatile, array of weapons. Now is when I get more aggressive on day 3. And on Saturday, that's where I'd want to hear that we traded for Cortland Sutton. We traded for Tyler Lockett. We traded for, someone who can come in and isn't some world beater, but is a legitimate outside starting wide receiver and can take up, hell, that we signed DJ Chark. Just give me somebody who can be a starting outside NFL receiver and just run the Gabe Davis clear out routes. And yes, we'll throw you the ball deep every once in a while to keep the offense honest. And the rest of the guys, Dalton Kincaid and Samuel and Shakir and, Ricky Pearsall, they're going to get 80 to 110 targets each, and we'll throw you 20 go balls. Just I need someone to run those routes. So that's the combination I'd want to see. I love that idea of that trade up. I think moving up from 60 to lock in a receiver is a great idea. Again, ideally, we get a guy that falls in our lap and is a receiver at 28. That's the best case scenario. But if not, and there's a lot of scenarios where it doesn't happen that way, we can still get an elite talent there and get a receiver later on, and it's not a disaster or a loss.
I keep making sure that we shout out Sonny Red. I also got to take a second here and shout out the audience here. We've got over 1,000 people, 1,000 of our closest friends right now watching on the video side live here as we record this on a Tuesday night. All right, so you kind of answered the question I was going to ask you, and that was, how concerned would you be if you stayed at 28 and you were hoping for a receiver, but teams that might be behind you right now that perceive to want receivers too, like say Baltimore or Kansas City? The Bills aren't the only team that might move up for the right player. There's other teams that might jump the Bills for the right player. So depending on, I guess, how many receivers you'd be satisfied with would probably be your answer. It kind of sounds like you wouldn't be too concerned about a team leapfrogging you. Like you wouldn't make a trade up just to make that trade up because would you be concerned that Baltimore or Carolina or one of those teams, a receiver needy team, wants to leap you to go get Adonai Mitchell or Worthy, whoever might be there at 28 or 428.
So I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. So one, I never want to have that strategy that, I need to move up preventatively just to block another team from going up to get us. Because now you're not only trading up is almost never worthwhile if it's not for a quarterback. Like the data will show you the amount of times that misses is way, way more than the amount of times it hits. Trading up for a quarterback is always worth it because if you hit on a quarterback, it's worth more than you gave up no matter what it was.
Absolutely.
Like if Kansas City gave up 10 first rounders for Patrick Mahomes, they still won the trade. If the Bills gave up 10 first rounders for Josh Allen, they still won the trade. You got a franchise quarterback. There was no doubt, but there is a downside. Like even if you know you're getting Justin Jefferson, you're still probably not going to give up 5 first-round picks. Like there's a limit. It's still a receiver. Like it's only a receiver. So you still have to have some rules. Now, I'd be lying if I said that the cornerback needy draft and the Chiefs jumping the Bills to get Trent McDuffie, which I think is reasonable that the Bills did want Trent McDuffie and ended up settling for Kyer Elam, and that everybody knows how that's panned out. You have an all-pro on one team and a struggling guy who can't start on the other.
Sure.
I'd be lying if I said there isn't a guy. So I'll use one that I don't want to trade up for, but I think fits this scenario. If Brian Thomas Jr. is there and it's pick 17, 18, 19, and you get to the point where, like, listen, if we let Kansas City jump us for Brian Thomas Jr. at pick 20 and they only have to give up, like, this year's 3rd and a future 4th, we're going to kick ourselves forever by letting this happen.
Right.
So, like, I don't want to just play defense and preventatively move up just in case, but he's also worth it. And that, all right, we'll give you pick 128 and next year's 2nd, whatever it might be, to move up. And, hey, maybe we didn't have to. Maybe we could have rolled the dice that it got to us anyways. And we got to remember, us doing that might now be why Kansas City just gets to sit at 32 and Xavier Worthy falls in their lap. So are people going to be doing cartwheels if we trade up for Brian Thomas Jr., but they get Xavier Worthy without needing to trade up? Is everybody going to be excited about that? Like, hey, look, we blocked him. Oh, crap, they got the fastest guy in combine history. Like, you got to realize we can't stop them from picking a player, and we can't stop them. What if it was the opposite? I use this example all the time about how hard the draft is. Who do you think the best GM in the NFL is?
Right now?
Yeah, most people think. The general consensus, I usually say most people think it's Howie Roseman. Most people think Philadelphia's GM, Howie Roseman, is probably the best draft in the best GM in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, he picked Jalen Reagor one pick before Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I know
what you're saying.
The shit's hard. If the best GM in the NFL, which I do not think is an exaggeration, I think he is.
Yeah.
He picked Jalen Reagor straight up one pick before Justin Jefferson in the first round. So you talk about, like, we can only do so much. Kansas City could have traded up for Kyer Elam and given us Trent McDuffie, and that wouldn't have been crazy. They were ranked here and here. They were the next two guys. That idea that, like, oh, we have to move up because whoever you trade up for is the better player is just not the case. Like, it happens all the time. How many times have we seen Fox NFL Sunday shows the thing of Amon-Ra St. Brown counting off the receivers that got drafted before him in the draft. He was a 4th-round pick. 14 receivers went ahead of him. Puka Nacua last year. Like, we see it all the time. We don't know that just because you're trading up means you're getting – when you trade up, you're getting a better prospect. You're getting a higher likelihood. You're not getting a better player. We have no idea who the better player is going to be. The best GMs in the NFL hit 50% of their picks. The best GMs hit 50%. Lots of GMs hit 30% of their picks. This shit's hard.
I have not spent a lot of time thinking about Brian Thomas Jr. This is just my own personal opinion.
Yeah.
I think he's going to go off the board if he's healthy.
Yeah.
If there's something we don't know about or something that's just surfacing and it's more than what we think, then maybe it doesn't play out that way. But I think of like last year when Gibbs went way earlier to Detroit. Remember we were talking about, potentially because a year ago, everyone in the world, especially me, that we needed a middle linebacker really, really bad. Turns out we didn't.
Yeah.
But anyway, Campbell was never an option because he got picked before the Bills had a chance to.
Yeah. People thought it would be a reach for the Bills if we took him at our spot, and he went 10 picks earlier in the first round.
The way, in a world full of awful Pat Moran takes, that is probably one of my top 5 to 10. I thought Terrell Bernard stunk, and I was furious. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This guy and Terrell Dodson are the guys battling it out at camp. I said, are you freaking kidding me?
So I don't even claim it. I was adamant he was going to start. I obviously didn't think he was going to be good.
Right.
I didn't think he was going to be this. I was like, no, I think he's going to start. I think like this makes sense. Anybody who thought that they knew he was going to be this good is either related to him or went to Baylor. There ain't anybody else that had that call.
All right, last thing here I want to talk about with the draft too. So there's one thing going into this draft right now from a Buffalo perspective that stinks, is that they don't currently have a 3rd-round pick. That stinks. You want a 3rd-round pick. So I came up with a scenario where the Bills would trade down. Now Brandon Beane is not a guy who trades down from the 1st round. Hasn't done it. So
he's done it twice in the 2nd round, and then he did a bunch last year in day 3. So he has traded down.
Not in the 1st round.
The only time he's done it up high is he traded down twice before taking James Cook.
Right. So my scenario is Washington, who might get a quarterback at 2, maybe an offensive tackle, something the Bills ain't thinking about. There might be a 1st-round graded tackle in the late 20s. Washington would come up from 36 to 28. The Bills would go down to 36, and they would give up like a 5th or something like that. But now the Bills would get a 3rd-round pick. I didn't write down the actual numbers, but I know at the end of the day, the Bills would trade down from 28 to 36 and get a 3rd-round pick. Kind of feels like, if you're talking about just receivers that you like, your sweet spot, doesn't it kind of feel like in a perfect Greg Tompsett world, if there's not a guy that you love that you're not getting at 28, doesn't it kind of feel like your best case scenario? Because now you got a second night 2 pick as well.
It's my ideal scenario.
Mm-hmm.
My number one dream. I lie. My number one dream is someone stupid falls to us at 28 and we just sit there and take him.
Yeah.
Beyond a gift falling in our lap, my most likely good scenario is probably that scenario we talked about where there's a weird run at receiver, so we're not going to take one while he's there. but there's also not a Jared Verse or like an obvious pick. It is like, well, we like Chop Robinson, but we also would like him more at 36. We like Jackson Powers Johnson, but we like him more at 36. So there isn't an obvious pick. All of our first round grades are gone at that point, and now it's, hey, we still like a lot of these guys, but they're all in a similar range. Well, then get me an extra third round pick. Get me back into day 2. Give me multiple top 100 picks, where now all of a sudden we're still getting, honestly, the exact same tier of player at pick 36. Maybe you even get a little bit more of a premium. Maybe it's somebody who wants Michael Penix Jr. Maybe it's somebody who wants Bo Nix, and they want the 5th-year option added on for a quarterback. And now maybe you're getting a little bit extra, not just that pick. So maybe you're getting, not for a quarterback, but we've seen the new GM for Arizona is very aggressive. Maybe Ossenfort is going to give you 35 and 71. And now all of a sudden you're getting like a pretty nice third-round pick.
Yeah.
And you're in a range where now you can do something really good with that. Now you're talking about you still might get Xavier Legette or Xavier Worthy or Lad McConkey or the receiver you wanted all along. You still have pick 60 where you can still get a really nice – you might get – it might be like Basham or the edge rusher out of Alabama.
It's going to drive me nuts. Not Dallas Turner, the other one. I know he's
going to make me crazy. There's a handful in the second round where there's still some interest. Like I said, so like a couple of these guys, once you get out of the second round, it gets really nasty. But now maybe we get one of them at 60, and now we have 71 where we still might get a really good guard or like the best safety left, like a really high-end, nice safety. But you now all of a sudden get a really, really nice player at a spot there. Or you might get a stud defensive tackle, like someone who's a pass-rushing defensive tackle. And now you've cobbled that together with probably the receiver we would have taken anyways at pick 28. Like you're probably not losing much, because if a guy was there who was just an obvious smack in the face, hey, take that guy, well, then we wouldn't trade down. So that scenario, again, my ideal scenario is we just get a gift given to us and we take the awesome guy who's sitting there for us. But ultimately, I'd rather play the game a little bit, see Brandon Beane trade down for the first time in his history, and then still get a good talent and give me an extra day 2 pick.
You're at pick 28. You're the general manager, and for whatever reason, ain't nobody calling you, man. Nobody wants that pick. Nobody wants to move up. Realistically, what is your dream player, best case scenario, a player that would just fall to you at 28 that's at least within the realm of being real?
Okay. So obviously we already talked about Brian Thomas Jr. a lot tonight. I do not think it's a realistic possibility. I think there's a chance that he's there. So my realistic dream scenario is, I know there's some challenges with the age. I know there's some challenges with the statistical profile. I know his interviews sound like he's like the most Southern person you've ever heard interviewed in your entire life. When I watch Xavier Legette, I see A.J. Brown, and God, I would love to give A.J. Brown to Josh Allen. When I see a 6'1" and change, 225-pound just ball of muscle break a 6-yard slant for a 70-yard touchdown because he's outrunning corners and safeties in the SEC that he outweighs by 40 pounds, I want that dude. I want that guy. That's the kind of guy I want. And they're going to do all their checks. They're going to do all the different pieces. I know he played quarterback in high school. He got a weird situation with changing coaches. Then he got injured right before the new coach was there. There are a lot of scenarios why it didn't work the way it was supposed to until his crazy breakout season. He's also maybe the best kick returner in the NFL. And with these new rules, you want to give me a 6'1", 225-pound rocked-up guy who runs a 4.39 and just give him 3, 4, 5 extra built-in touches a game where he gets to just take the ball and take off on the new kickoff rules. That's my dream scenario. He's not the perfect wide receiver prospect. I'm not saying that he does everything right. He's phenomenal in man coverage. Well, guess what? We got a whole bunch of guys who are good at finding the soft spots in zone. I want a guy who you can't press and they can beat your man coverage, because even if you're close, he's just going to out-muscle you for the ball because he's bigger and stronger than you. I want that guy. We don't have that guy on the roster.
It's funny. We talked about a lot of receivers tonight, yet today I went on, I think it might have been the Buffalo News, and they had a list of all, like, a bunch of mock draft picks from a bunch of outlets. And the guy who was, aside from Ryan Thomas Jr., mocked to the Bills the most often was Adonai Mitchell. But we haven't really talked much about him tonight. And I got to know how I feel about him right now, which kind of would concern me about using a first-round pick on him. He seems like a high ceiling, low floor, maybe high risk, high reward, boom or bust, I guess is the term I'm looking for here. Type of player. Do you feel that way about him or no?
100%. And myself and most of the guys that cover one, we had kind of dismissed him because when the initial reports came out about there were some rumors of poor practice habits, a lack of consistent effort, and lack of consistent, like, top end route running effort. Like, he didn't always run his routes. You could tell immediately on the play watching the film that, the ball's not going to him this play. He, like, would take 3 steps off the line and just turn and look and watch. He wouldn't ever even try to trick his receiver or his corner into like, oh, hey, maybe it's coming to me. Like, he wouldn't even take off the line. He'd take a couple steps and be like, yeah, it's going over there. And so now some people are like, maybe he's conserving his energy. But yeah, maybe. You want to know who won't like that? Sean McDermott.
Nope.
You want to know who coaches our team? Sean McDermott.
It's like Lindy Ruff of the NFL. Yeah.
So when we saw those reports, we're not even going to waste time on him. There's no chance we're going to pick that kind of player. So since then, we've circled back because, all right, maybe that was a coaching element that they told the guys, like, hey, we have a point-and-click designed offense. When we tell the guy that he's throwing over there, he's going to throw it over there. Don't waste your effort. Be ready to go top speed when it's your route and go and do that. So maybe the Bills found that out. Maybe that's reality. I'm giving a lot of grace here, but maybe. He does have type 1 diabetes. So does Reed Ferguson. Like, Reed Ferguson manages his diabetes really well. Mark Andrews manages his diabetes really well. Like, that's not a disqualifier in the NFL. People all of a sudden being concerned that, like, he's managed his diabetes the first 21 years of his life. He's probably going to keep managing it pretty well now. So those kind of things, are reasons why people had dismissed him. The reasons not to is, I think technically he was the number 1 size speed combination guy in the speed scores of, like, height, weight versus speed. I think he was ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. in those kind of metrics. Like, he's the freakiest of the freaks of, like, big, tall, fast, explosive, can jump and can run like the wind. Is pretty awesome. Now,
where was the production though last year? That's the thing, man. He only had 3 games, I think, maybe with 70 yards or more receiving, something like that.
And so again, that's why we've been off of him and why I'm not high on him. But if I'm going to play devil's advocate, there's some pretty poor quarterback play. I know Quinn Ewers is supposed to be the guy. He clearly was not. Like, I don't even think he's going to be an NFL quarterback. You have some of the same issues with Xavier Worthy. People overlook those because he ran the fastest 40 in NFL history. Well, Adonai Mitchell's a better prospect than Xavier Worthy is, and also ran almost as fast, weighing like 50 pounds more than him. So, I can dismiss some of that. When he did get the ball, he's explosive when the ball's in his hands. And I'll give him one thing. That dude, like, there's a rumor he dropped the ball once in junior high, but nobody has film of it. Like, that dude catches everything that's ever been thrown near him.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to give some grace, like, yeah, he doesn't get open as consistently as I'd like. He's not great with all of his route running. He's not like some, Deontay Johnson type separation guy that just creates separation out of nowhere and gets open like crazy. But he's big, strong, fast, and catches everything that goes to him. All right, maybe I can get my head around it. So, this is where anybody who, like, does all this work before the draft is like, no, I love these guys. I hate those guys. Wait until the Bills pick him at 28. You spend, like, 2 hours watching highlights online and be like, oh, no, I love this guy.
Sure.
People will get their heads around it real quick.
We're getting ready to get out of here as Sonny Red. I feel like we're on the same page where realistically on night 1, if you're making a pick on night 1, which we both think they're going to, I feel like Xavier Legette would be that guy that I think we could both be happy with. If it's not Brian Thomas Jr.
Someone named Xavier.
You
give me someone named Xavier, and I'll probably
so you'd be perfectly good with Xavier Worthy too.
I think so. He really looks like the modern version of Deshaun Jackson to me. Now, which you can argue, like, do we need Deshaun Jackson in this offense? And like, I don't know if it's exactly perfectly what we need, but would I love a guy that for the first time in Josh Allen's career can look at him and be like, I bet you can't outthrow me.
Yeah.
I bet you can't possibly
Someone who will
overthrow
scare
me.
the shit out of some defenses
Yes.
too, man. The
And
speed.
Think about what that would do. Like, so Xavier Legette is exciting and would be able to. We've never had the guy that can take the slant to the house. I want that, but I don't know that safeties are like, oh my God, where is he? Like in a Tyreek Hill way, they're like every
Right.
single snap, the safety has to be like, all right, where's Worthy? Where's Worthy? Okay, he's over here. All right, I got to make sure my spacing's all right. Because if you take one wrong step with Xavier Worthy, he's gone. He's gone, and he's going to get by you. And his speed isn't the John Ross speed that we've seen before, or for us, Marquise Goodwin speed, where like, yes, when you manufactured it just right, you could see the elite Olympic level track speed, but play to play, you didn't actually see it.
Right.
Xavier Worthy has play speed, like on jet sweeps and on bubble screens. So his acceleration is like, oh my, is that guy going this? Is this like 1.5 speed? Like, is he going the same speed as everybody else? And all of a sudden it zips past these other guys. So if they get their head around that like, that's the guy we want, I will 100% be on board, because I would love that element added to this offense. And then let Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel use that space underneath that now has been created, that instead of the safeties being comfortable being at 12 yards, they now feel like they have to be at 15 yards because they do that. I would love to give those guys those 3 extra yards of space.
You know, I ain't going to lie to you, man. I don't think I've spent much time over the last couple of weeks thinking about Xavier Worthy. I think you might have just sold me on him in the last 90 seconds or so, which is going to be the last thing here that I want to ask you. So for people who are going to maybe watch this or listen to this tomorrow and they're looking at, forget about round one. Round one played out the way it plays out. Night two, maybe even early Saturday afternoon. Who are, just give me one or two of your favorite day two, day three guys who got no chance of going in the first round, but guys that you would like to see. And maybe, again, people watching or listening, they'll see the draft and they'll be like, oh, Greg talked about that guy.
So I'll give you a safety that I really love. Malik Mustafa. He's out of Wake Forest. And when he did his pro day workout, he took his shirt off and he looked like a Marvel hero, like a Marvel superhero, and then did like a 42.5 vertical jump.
Wow.
And he's like the mix of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde together. Like, he can play the range in the secondary, but he can also come up and hit like a hammer. He's a guy that I really, really like. I'd love to see him on day 3. And then I'll give a shout out to our guy, Aaron Quinn. He's been all over this guy. There's a running back out of Troy that is like, if you had Devin Singletary, but a really good athlete.
I know where you're going.
Kamani Vidal is like when you do all the, now you hear teams talk about using the AI video of like where they can tell play speed. He tested as the most in-game athletic running back in the country.
Yeah.
Breaks tackles, awesome pass protector, will like chuck, linebackers and defensive ends that look way bigger than him, and he'll throw them out of there like Ezekiel Elliott. He's a guy that's going to check a lot of Bills boxes, and I would love to pair with the James Cook.
I like it, man. I like it a lot. And that's going to do it, by the way, for this episode. I want to thank everyone who watches live on video, of course. Thank ahead of time everyone who's going to listen to this on Wednesday. At that point, going to be just a day away from the draft.
We're ready.
I'm not even asking you for no predictions because you still got 24 hours to change your mind, whether it's on your Twitter, Cover One shows, stuff like that. But I want to thank Sonny Reds one more time. Still got a couple wings left that we're going to get after. Dude, I could have honestly sat here and talked to you for another 2 more hours.
It's been great.
It's been a lot of
really,
fun, but you got to get back home, man. You got to get out of here. It's late. I've kept you long enough. Thank you, everybody. I'll be back with a brand new show tomorrow. I'll talk to you then.